Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 15 of 2021. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at The Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media /The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 200% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie and use the promo code ODDS200. Terms, conditions, and location apply. If you'd like to help us out with our cost sponsor of the website and the podcast, we'd love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a member. For $24.99 a month, you can get my plays and premium plays before the line moves. If nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, we have a great show for you today. Ralph Michaels from WagerTalk is here to break down some of the conference tournaments here. We're going to talk about some of the odds, some of the favorites, and some of the long shots that might be worth taking for your basketball viewing pleasure. Can't wait to get into that. Before he comes on, just wanted to remind you that we are having an NCAA tournament bracket challenge where the odds breakers are giving away $500 to the first, second, and third place. We're going to do $250 for first, $175 for second, and $75 for third place. Completely free. All you have to do is sign up, retweet our latest podcast, or give us a 5-star review, take a quick snapshot of it, and send it to admin at theoddsbreakers.com. And that way, you will be eligible to win if you win the bracket challenge. We just sent an article out Monday with your entry link. Make sure you check that out, and please spread the word on the Odds Breakers. Spread the word on this tournament. Let's make it a big one. Let's have a great time betting on these games throughout the month of March. These conference tournament brackets, there's some key things that you have to look at when you're handicapping them. Number one, how many games does the team have to play to win it all? Some teams have to play 5 games in a row.
Fucking bullshit!
Like the conferences that have 14 teams, the worst ones, and the lowest seeds have to start on Wednesday. They have to win Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But the teams that have the top 4 seeds in those brackets start on Friday and only have to win 3 games in a row. Huge case in price discrepancy here. Some of those prices were wrong on these teams when the odds first came out. Some of those teams that got the bye you could predict before the tournament brackets come out, like we did with Georgia Tech and Purdue. But either way, I think Ralph and I found some value in some of these teams for these conference tournaments. Hopefully, we all get the cash and have a little bit of fun.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Before Ralph comes on, quickly recap the weekend. Friday started out great, up about 4 units. Saturday with the UFC, down about 5.5 to 6 units. And Sunday, up 6.5 units after we went 5-1. So overall, a great weekend of sports betting. As far as the UFC, the Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling fight was an absolute travesty. I mean, Yan was beating the crap out of Sterling and lost his belt because he threw an illegal knee to Sterling, and all Sterling had to do was just not continue the fight to win the championship. Now, in my opinion, I don't think he could have continued the fight anyways. Lots of people say that, he was playing chicken, right? But in my opinion, he was probably almost knocked out to the point before he caught that knee. The thing that sucks about this rule is that, did Peter Yan do something illegal? Yes. Did he get some bad advice from his corner? It sounded like it. They might have meant yes. I know that they said the word yes from his corner. I don't think they meant yes, hit him with a knee. Some bad communication there. But once a fighter is deemed down, you are not allowed to knee them. Okay? But he did it in the heat of the moment. And that's what makes this rule so stupid, because he lost his championship over something like that. And Aljamain Sterling, all he had to do was just not get up to win the championship. What a silly rule. I mean, in my opinion, he should have been disqualified, but you should also keep your belt especially if you're beating that opponent, right? I mean, with a disqualification, it should go to the card. And if you're beating your opponent when that happened, you should be able to keep that belt. So you should be able to keep that title, and then obviously the Aljamain should have had the first shot at the rematch, in my opinion, whenever that happens. It was a bad beat. It was just a very strange situation, and definitely a bad beat for anybody that bet on Peter Yan. We had the distance, and we also came in with Peter Yan, and both lost because of that situation.
Unreal.
Such a strange situation. I never lost a fight, I never lost a bet on a fight when the fighter that I bet on was kicking the living crap out of the other guy and got disqualified. I mean, I've seen DQs happen before, but I never lost a bet on one. I especially never seen a DQ happen when the guy was winning. Just a very strange situation. I also think it's a little strange that it's kind of left up to the fighter. I mean, this is the ultimate fighting. This is UFC. This is MMA. I mean, if you're down, shouldn't the refs call the fight anyway? If you can't take a knee, I don't know. Heat of the moment type situation. Definitely a disappointing loss for anybody that bet on Peter Yan. I don't know if we would have went the distance in that one, but I know our Peter Yan bet would have came through. We did lose the Nunez bet as well. I mean, she's just so damn good. She beat Megan that quick with submission. I mean, she could have beat her by KO. I almost think that she did submission to pity her. But, I mean, I thought that Anderson was going to be smart enough to try to stay away from Nunez for a while. But, I mean, Nunez is just that badass. Nobody can even come close to matching up with her. That's the whole issue. She's just that good. I mean, do we want to see another Shevchenko fight? The closest one, I guess. Probably not. But in the Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya fight, that went really well for us. We bet over 2.5 rounds. Got minus 140, but that worked out. And obviously, Jan won that fight. And I did take a free play and I tweeted it out. I said, on this podcast last week, if this thing gets up to plus 220, you have to bet Jan. I couldn't get to my computer to send it out as a premium play. I just wasn't in the situation where I was by my computer. But hopefully you guys grabbed that and saw us tweet it out. So that worked out really well. We also were able to get the Askar Askarov versus Joseph Benavidez over. That went the distance. So that certainly helped. But it would have been a killer Saturday if Peter Yan would have won that fight. It would have took us into the profitable for UFC instead of close to push. But either way, lots of UFC coming up. We're going to have many opportunities to make that back. And one thing I will say is that Islam Makhachev is going to be an absolute badass. I mean, he destroyed Drew Dober, and it wasn't even close. I mean, he's kind of like that next Khabib, potentially. I mean, his wrestling's like that. He's trained with Khabib. So be watching for Islam Makhachev coming up through the ranks here. I'm probably going to have to be on him his next fight. I mean, I'm sure you're not going to get a great price on him, but you might not. He still might be worth more than what Vegas is going to put out on him. You know, I doubt he's going to get like Gaethje or Poirier anytime soon, but he will probably fight like a Tony Ferguson or maybe even a Conor McGregor. If I'm McGregor, I'm not taking that fight. Maybe he gets Beneil Dariush, right? Ranked number 9, Beneil. Beneil's actually awesome. That would be a tough one for me if Islam fought Beneil. But hopefully he gets someone pretty big. Obviously that Michael Chandler that pretty much just called everybody out before the Conor McGregor fight is another candidate that would be really interesting for Islam. All right, my friends, without further ado, let's get into some NCAA conference tournaments with Ralph Michaels. And now I'm very excited to bring back maybe the best handicapper I know who isn't afraid to share his information with us on Twitter and many other locations. You can find him and his great plays at WagerTalk.com. I'd like to welcome back Mr. Ralph Michaels from WagerTalk. You can follow him on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Ralph, the madness is here, my man. How you been?
Kiev, there's nothing better than March Madness, and even more so. You know, March Madness is over in 63 games. I find more value and more excitement in this week of the conference tournaments with all the major conference tournaments, and those Thursday, Friday games for me are the two best days in college basketball.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely, and you have just so many options to have some fun. You can have your serious stuff down on your games, and maybe you can have some fun money to do some parlays and things like that. There's just so much excitement going on. My favorite time of year for sure. And, it's great to have guys like you come on the show, Ralph, because, it's something you study all year long, and I'm sure you help a lot of people out, and really appreciate you coming on.
Kiev, I do want to mention one thing is, a lot of people ask me about college basketball information, and what's so hard to find is conference-only stats in college hoops. Well, that's why I started doing the WagerTalk College Basketball Stat Report. If you go to WagerTalk.com and go to my page, or WT.buzz/RM, you can download the College Basketball Guide for free. I update it once a week. It has the conference record. You see the standings. It has the points per game and the diff, the rebounds per game and the diff, the assists and steals. It gives you home and away ATS records versus A, B, and C tier teams, and the same for over-unders. So when you're looking at these conference tournaments, make sure you download my guide, and in a glance, you're going to become an expert on each and every conference just by checking out that stat report.
It's an amazing report, and I've used it multiple times. And what's so great about it is that teams play a lot different in most cases when it comes to conference play than what they did in the non-conference throughout November and December. And it's such a big difference that you have these Ken Poms out there and the Torviks just taking the pure number of what they did, which really doesn't necessarily match up to how the game's going to play out because they had such a Jekyll and Hyde type team differences between the conference and the non-conference. And I look for things like that. You show the home records, you show the away records, the winning percentages, the amount of points for, points against, just absolute great stuff. And you can find some serious nuggets and some lines being off by a lot, in my opinion. And it's helped me for sure, Ralph.
Absolutely. You have a team like Prairie View who needs to play some money games early. So what do? They play the Louisvilles, the Washington States, the TCUs. They play a very difficult schedule. They start the season 1-4. Lo and behold, that 1-4 team then gets into conference play. They are the elite team in the SWAC, and they're a perfect 13-0 in conference action. So, yes, you certainly find a lot of teams that got mauled early where their overall year-to-date stats look very poor, but when you're comparing them in conference action, you'll see they are one of the best teams.
Absolutely, 100%. And then after you get a sample size from that, it's the type of information that you share with everybody that could help us give it an edge. Because let's face it, these days, the books are going upon what Ken Palm is spitting out. And if they're not doing that, it's going to get there just because of the way the public seems to bet these games, doesn't it?
It does. And, one more addition that I forgot to mention on the WagerTalk college basketball stat report is a conference-only strength of schedule. While a conference schedule in the past used to be very consistent because you played the same 18 teams, let's not forget about all those cancellations. There's some teams that played 18 conference games. There's some teams that may have played 12 or 13 conference games. And by looking at the conference-only strength of schedule, you're able to help decipher those point-per-game diffs because they can truly vary.
Oh, absolutely. And, some people start with the easy part of their conference. Wisconsin was that, and they came in, their last 5 games was at against some of the top teams. And what did they do? I think they lost about 4 out of 5 of those games, and they didn't even cover the spread. Something that you wouldn't know unless you were a true fan that really dove deep into Badger basketball this year without reports like yours. 2 teams, for example, in the one conference, Ralph, that I won off of just because of your report was fading Clemson on the road and betting on Syracuse at home. All in the ACC, all from your report.
Well, there's a lot of home-road dichotomy, as you mentioned. So, what I do like looking at is I will do another report next week when March Madness comes around, just listing the road and neutral stats for each team. So, again, some of those are skewed because when you have a team from the SWAC or the MEAC that played a very difficult schedule, they may have played 9 road games against foes that were superior to them, whereas you get into the Big Ten or ACC, some of those teams only play 4 or 5 road games this year. So while those stats are skewed, it does give you a good perception of where that team ranks, and are they able to win on the road, and can they win straight up as an underdog?
Absolutely, and that's super important for tournament time right here. Moving on to another subject, you guys once in a while release your 4-star plays. You're hitting in an amazing high clip on them, always a very high percentage, which is what really helps people's bottom lines here. Can you tell our listeners what it takes to get to a 4-star play?
Well, there is actually, I go up to 5. We do have a 5% play at WagerTalk. So, 5s are the absolute top. There's only a couple of those each month. But really, when I'm breaking down a game, I have a power rating number that I use that I make on each game, but I can't base a play on that because so much can happen in college basketball from one game to the next with an injury, with a player banged up. But I basically go through a 3-step process. I look at situational handicapping. Is a team playing a 3rd straight road game? Do they have revenge? What happened the last time they played? I go through technical aspects. I look at the over/under and the ATS records. I look at the stats. What type of rebounding team are they? What type of steals are they? Then I look at matchups. Do I have a team that's great in forcing turnovers against freshman point guards? Do I have a team that struggles 3-point shooting against an elite 3-point shooting defense? So I go through each of those steps individually. And when I have check marks in my power rating numbers, in my situational numbers, in my technical numbers, and in my matchup numbers, those then become the stronger play for me at the end of each and every day.
Oh, that's great stuff. And when those all match up, that's when those 5 stars come up, I would imagine, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, they all have to click. Now there's times where, I may not like a matchup, but so many of the other things are saying this is a great spot. When you're looking at a team, an example, you're often upset of a major rival, and then you're looking, even though some of the other factors may not match up, it still may be a play for me. But when they all do align, that clearly is my 4 and 5% plays.
Yeah, 100%. I do the same thing. And, for me, 5% are pretty rare. I might get 1 or 2 per year. 4 stars are a little bit less rare. But, I just noticed that you guys were hitting at such a nice clip over there. I definitely wanted to mention it. It takes a lot to get into it. And it's just amazing how many games you have to handicap to get to them, right? You guys go through every single game on the board. That's huge. And that takes so much time.
It does. It's really a 2-day process to go through a Saturday card. I start early in the afternoon on Friday, going through, breaking down, making my power ratings on each team. Then basically what I do is I look which teams I have favored in the power rating situations, and then break them down into the next step, and plays just continue to progress. So I may start, on a card where there's 100-some games, I may break it down to where I'm looking at 30. Then 30, I'm breaking them down, and then I may get it to 20. Then I may get it to 10, and then I start pulling out the best plays from that. So it's an ever progression where you're really never done handicapping that card, because through each step you're making sure there haven't been line changes. You're trying to catch up on the reading to make sure no one was injured, no one was unexpectedly hurt, or there's any players that are not playing that were expected to play. So it's a process that takes a long time. It's a difficult process with 347 teams, but as we always say, the advantage is ours. Vegas puts up numbers on all 347 teams. We don't need to bet those teams. We just pull out our best bets from that group.
Absolutely, 100%. And that's why you guys are so successful. Well, let's move on to a little bit of fun here. And we know the conference tournaments are here. And what's sometimes fun to talk about is some of the big numbers that we get on some of these teams. In many cases, these numbers are fraudulent, and your probably best bet is to stay away from it or look at it a different way. But here at the Oddsbreakers, we want to see if there's any value, which I found a little bit that I think, and we'll talk to Ralph about it throughout the conference tournaments starting up this week. So if you're ready, Ralph, let's get right into that.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, let's start right off with the West Coast Conference, because I think this is the easiest one to, just take a look at. You have Gonzaga here, 1,500. You have to lay, and just to you listeners out there that might be newer to sports betting, that means you have to lay $1,500 to make $100. If you want to make $200, you have to lay $3,000. That's how big of a price this is on Gonzaga, and that's how big of a favorite it is. It's nothing new for us, because this over the last 5-10 years has been pretty similar, and it's been a while since really, I guess BYU was a little bit competitive last year, and they are the next best at plus 400 here, which I'm personally not buying. In my opinion, there is nothing worth it to look at in this conference, Ralph. What are your thoughts?
No, well, you have to remember, we're a couple rounds in, so we're to the semifinals, so we're only talking 4 teams left. Gonzaga, an 18-point favorite against St. Mary's tonight, and, if they beat that, they're going to play the winner of Pepperdine or BYU. If it's Pepperdine, it'll probably be about 18 points again. If it's BYU, it'll probably be a little closer to 12 points. So, that's why you're laying those odds. A lot of times I will say this. You're not going to be able to find big money lines. You're not going to be able to play against Gonzaga. So sometimes the only option you have is to bet the futures if you think they can get upset. But for the most part, if you are taking your favorite team in a tournament that is 4 or 5 games long, and you just look and you bet that money line, and then you parlay that money line again, and you bet that money line 4 straight times, doubling it each time, doubling your winnings, for most times you're going to have more money made than you would be betting the future. So if there's a team that you really do like, work out the money line odds and project what you think they'll be, and see if you're not going to get more value doing that. Yeah,
mechanical parlay is what Ralph's talking about. Money line rollover. We discussed that a little bit on the last show. Look at it this way here. BYU's plus 400, and they're playing Pepperdine. They're not even to the final game. they're going to be bigger than plus 400 when they play Gonzaga, in my opinion. Gonzaga's going to be, if it's 12 points, I mean, that's like minus 600, minus 700 on Gonzaga's side, and maybe plus 400, plus 450 on BYU's side. So why would you not do a money line rollover if you like BYU? And so
exactly the case. That's, the theoretical hold on futures as they are is almost 50%. And you just explained it. I mean, BYU, why risk betting it now when you're going to get a better line just on one game tomorrow in the finals?
Absolutely. So great point and great way to back up that. But in my opinion, I think Gonzaga wins it all anyway. So I'm personally not going to get involved in this one. Let's move on to
the funny thing is this is Gonzaga can really do their conference a lot of favors by losing in the finals and letting a second team get in, because BYU on the bubble likely not to get in. So what's best for the conference would be for Gonzaga to lose. They'll still be a number 1 seed, but the Zags are just too good. I agree with you. When you get an elite point guard like they have and have a 5-star player, which they're not accustomed to recruiting, it took them to the new level this season.
Let the conspiracy theories flow, man. I mean, it's important for them to win it, but at the same time, I mean, if you're that big of a favorite and you're winning it year over year, I don't know. I have friends that always want their team to lose in the conference tournament because they think that if they win the conference tournament, they're going to lose the big dance, the NCAA tournament. And it's just kind of a paranoid thing.
Well, that's probably half. That's probably only like 8 of the conferences.
Yeah,
you have the power conferences, and then Gonzaga is in. The A10 is in. The American is in. Loyola would have been in, but other than that, you have to win to make the tournament. So we have 2 different situations. The lower 20 conferences, lower 15 conferences where you have to win to get in, and then those that have to play 4 or 5 days physical games and then turn around and play in the tournament. This year, of course, in the tournament, they do have 1 extra day of rest, with the first 2 days being played on Friday and Saturday.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting how we do have that extra day of rest, and I'm curious to how that's all going to play out. It hasn't happened before in my day anyway. So interesting. Real quick, BYU, are they an at-large team anyway? I mean, they do have wins over San Diego State, Utah State, obviously, back in the non-conference, which are, top 50 teams. San Diego State's ranked 19th on KenPom. BYU's ranked 20th on KenPom. I would almost think that they're at large anyway.
Yeah, they probably are. A loss today would hurt, being 19-6. But then you got the best wins, and your best win, you only have 1 win against the top 40 team. That was the San Diego State win. So when we get into the net numbers, you start falling off with the strength of schedule. Their overall strength of schedule is number 78. So I do believe they're in. And a lot of it, I think there's going to be some thought and talk into the committee about teams that perhaps got screwed last year, that if there's that bubble, BYU had a much better team last year, even though they were 24-8. With Childs and Hawes and, and the lineup that they had last year. I power rated last year's BYU teams a few higher. I believe they're in, but, we've seen the committee many times only take 1 team out of a lot of conferences.
Yes, 100%. I think it'd be a travesty to leave them out this year, for some not worthy team like a Penn State or something like that. So that would be crazy. Well, let's move on to the ACC then, and I'll just go ahead first here. And this was crazy, and you can look on MyBookie or some of the other offshore books, and actually some of the onshore books had these numbers. I believe DraftKings had Georgia Tech at 30-1 this morning, and I tweeted this out. I was comparing books. I was comparing MyBookie and BetOnline. MyBookie had Georgia Tech at 25-1 plus 2,500 to win the ACC tournament, and BetOnline had them at 8-1. Well, I hammered the Georgia Tech again because I bet Georgia Tech 3-4 weeks ago. I sent it out to our members. I said I'm taking them at 16-1. I think they're going to get the double bye. Well, lo and behold, they do, and all of a sudden I'm seeing them at 25-1. I'm like, what's going on? I took a piece of that again, but now they're down to 600, so 6-1. So I got some pretty good line value on that. Now, even if I lose this one, I'll still feel good that I did it. Do you have any thoughts about the ACC tournament?
Well, right now, I was a Florida State fan the entire time, but their finish really has concerned me down the stretch. I think North Carolina's playing the best basketball, and you talk about the worst ACC tournament we've had in a long time. My sleeper that I think might get hot or has the potential to do a few things would be Virginia Tech in there. So while Florida State's the big favorite, and I'd not be shocked at all to win, current form, the way they're playing, has me calling for North Carolina to win with a sleeper on Virginia Tech.
All right, well, look at that. North Carolina beat Duke pretty bad, and I thought my over ticket was toast, but guess what? Duke kept fouling at the end, and they kept scoring, so I was pretty pleasantly surprised to get that, even while they're getting beat up so bad. But for me, I think Georgia Tech is tied for second with Virginia. Now, I know their defense is an issue, but so is pretty much everyone except for Virginia in this, and Florida State, I suppose. Florida State's probably going to win it, and I'll probably get an opportunity to hopefully hedge that. But I just kind of like how Georgia Tech has been playing this whole year, a little bit with a chip on their shoulder, and at 25-1. I thought that was a fantastic investment. But what I will say is at 6-1, I wouldn't take it right now. If you do like Georgia Tech, probably a money line rollover.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not value at 6-1 in there. You're talking about a team that, while they did finish fourth in the conference, this is one of those instances where they played 17 games in ACC action, and Virginia Tech only played 13 games. You have a 4-game difference. And does that, we won't know until after the fact, but does that give that team an edge that lost a lot of games to COVID to have much fresher legs to be able to withstand a 3 or 4 consecutive game streak to win these ACC tournament?
Absolutely. And you know what was really pathetic that I saw? I saw Duke at 10-1 to win this thing. Duke's playing on the first day. They're playing on Tuesday. I mean, teams like Virginia, Florida State, and Georgia Tech don't even have to play until Thursday. 2 less games. So I was just like, are you kidding? That's just an insult to the public bettor out there, seeing Duke at 10-1. And they're at 20-1 in most books, which I still think is a ripoff. And, they can come back and say, well, hey, we know we're going to get a lot of money, and we're going to, be left out on a limb if they happen to win this. Bullshit. Anybody that saw Duke this year, I don't even think is betting Duke. And in my opinion, you got to look for you got to shop around, because if you really want to bet a team, you're going to get some better values looking at other places. And just seeing Duke at that price kind of, made me want them to lose even more there, Ralph.
Well, I mean, again, you're talking 6-1. They're going to be a dog the rest of the way. So even if you bet them today, you're laying 12. So let's say you start tomorrow and you're betting them for 100. You roll it over 2, you roll it over 4, you roll it over 8. That would be with them pick them in 4 straight games, whereas they're going to be a dog. So again, don't get caught up in a lot of these futures, because again, the theoretical hold is crazy, and they're allowed to do what they want. If the only fair way to bet a future is if you have a yes or a no, which is like what the circus started offering. Otherwise, find more creative ways to bet on that team without that future bet.
Absolutely, 100%. And a money line rollover on Duke, I think, would be at least 100-1, especially where they're ranked right now. If they played a Florida State on a neutral court, they're going to be a minimum 8-point dog, in my opinion. So I think,
absolutely agree.
So yeah, please do not take any of those terrible lines. Let's move on to the next one then, and we have the Big Ten. The Big Ten Conference, and Iowa's up there at plus 325, Illinois is at plus 250, Michigan is at plus 200, and then Ohio State is at plus 600, and Purdue's at plus 650. Ralph, I gave out Purdue at 12-1 about a week and a half ago because I knew Purdue had the easiest way out, and they were going to jump into that 4 seed, and Ohio State had one of the harder ways out. And lo and behold, Ohio State is got to play on Thursday and not on Friday. So I got some good value on that. It's down to 6-1. But at the same time, I don't like the prices on the favorites here. And I do think it's going to be a Michigan or an Illinois win, in my opinion. If you want to get real cute, Maryland's playing some pretty good ball. Well, they did until they lost to Penn State, I guess. But I wonder how much invested they were in that game. At 50-1, Michigan State was at 50-1. Now they're down to 20-1 because of the name Tom Izzo. Anything in the Big Ten?
No, I'm with you. I have Michigan and Illinois, and those are teams that I think can win the entire tournament. Michigan didn't play. They had that COVID layoff, so they're the team that's fresh. And coming off the loss against Michigan State, and the Michigan State team's interesting. I mean, yes, Izzo, but we also saw them play very inspired ball against Michigan on Sunday. So to me, Michigan State would be the only sleeper that I would pick. But I am chalk here, thinking Illinois or Michigan are going to win this.
Yeah, and I did watch Michigan play Michigan State. Michigan just didn't. They looked completely disinterested in that game. So it really hurt Michigan State's odds if you like them. And I guess at the end of the day, if they win it, we're going to say, duh, Izzo, duh, they just finished pretty well, type thing. But I just don't see how this team can make that switch so quickly, especially in such a hard Big Ten. When do you have to start playing earlier than the other teams? So I agree with you as well. Let's move on to the next one then, Mountain West. And Air Force 300-1, and I don't think so. I'm not touching the Mountain West, my man.
I will book that all day long. Anyone that wants to bet Air Force, you just feel free to send your money to me, and don't worry about it because it's gone. There's, that's just silly. I look at this, and it's been a 4-horse race the entire time, and I still think it'll be a 4-horse race. And when you have a team like San Diego State that's been there and done that, has done so well, Colorado State has impressed me, and Boise has impressed me. I thought Utah State would play much better, but they're not a team that I would even bet on now. I look into it deep, and the one long shot that I have, and it's not like they've played that well, but I love the coach. I've watched enough of their games. I think UNLV, if there's an upset where, we get an early upset and they don't have to play the top couple seeds in back-to-back games, I think they're capable of pulling the upset at home. They tend to always play well in their home tournament, one of the only tournaments where it is on someone's home court. So to me, I'm going to throw San Diego State in there because you have to. And then Boise State would be number 2 with a sleeper on UNLV.
All right. Well, awesome stuff because I don't have anything. I think Nevada is the one that kind of drew my eye at 20-1. I see UNLV at 30-1. I think they should be more like 50-1. Probably money line rollover for that one too. But I agree. I think it's San Diego State's to lose here, and maybe a Colorado State sneaks in. I don't even think Boise State's going to hang with them. Utah State.
Well, this Boise State team, although they had a poor finish, you have to remember they lost 3 straight down the stretch. What I necessarily don't mind because they played San Diego State twice on the road, and then after those 2 physical back-to-back games, then they hosted Fresno and had a disappointing loss. But this is not your Boise team of old. You have multiple SEC transfers in there that are really playing well. And if Alston can make enough run on offense and Dennis keeps the point guard play under control, to me they're someone I have my eye on. I think I'll be playing them during the tourney. But again, I think there'll be more value just playing on them in a game-wise versus the future.
All right, well, there you go. Let's move into the Big Sky Conference then. Eastern Washington's the favorite at plus 170. Then you have Southern Utah at plus 200, Weber State at plus 250. Then it gets up to the thousands at Montana. If I was going to pick this one, and I haven't made a bet on it, it'd probably be Weber State at the plus 250, but I would rather bet on a game-by-game basis too.
Yeah, I used many more Big Sky games this season than I have in the past. I mean, I was a fan of Eastern Washington when they had their strong finish last year, and they really showed me a lot. They returned a lot of starters. Southern Utah to me was just a sort of a team that jumped up there. Obviously, the first three teams get a bye with Southern Utah, Eastern Washington, and Weber State. But I'm going to go with one of the favorites again. I have Eastern Washington that I think is a team that can pull it out, and they haven't played great. I have no reason to say this, but for some reason, Montana seems to be a sneaky team that I think might be able to keep a couple games close. We'll see. All
right, Montana there sitting at 10-1. Next one we have is the Big East Conference here, and if you weren't living under a rock, you know that Villanova has some major injury issues here. Losing Colin Gillespie was just brutal. Now I saw that Moore got injured last game. I don't know how bad it is. What are your thoughts on the Big East?
Yeah, I wasn't going to play Villanova anyway. So that probably just favors some of the other odds. I'm buying into Creighton. I think Creighton has played incredible defense. We always talk offense with Creighton, and what McDermott brought, and last year, they had such an efficient offense with the number 3 offense, and Tyshawn Alexander and Zurkowski. This year, while their offense isn't quite as elite, it's still top 15, but their defensive presence has been positive to me. You look at a record and you say, well, 18-7 isn't great, but really the Big East and the Big Ten, as well as the Big 12, just cannibalized each other. So, you're playing that physical schedule and you're playing those teams back-to-back games. There's just a lot of games you lose. So those 18-7 teams that have top 10, top 15 offenses and top 30, top 40 defenses are the type of teams that I think can advance. So I am on Creighton here. I am on the chalk, and my sleeper pick is Xavier.
All right, and Xavier's desperate, so they didn't get to play a lot of games. So I'm not sure. I think they're kind of a bubble team, aren't they, right now?
Yeah, well, again, it's tough to say with what the committee is. I mean, their numbers aren't good. They've never been in the top 50, so I don't think they are in no way at 13-7 and a 6-7 conference record. If they lose to Butler round 1, there's at 6-8 in conference play they aren't in. There's no way. I think they have to win it all. I don't think Xavier is in.
All right. Well, I can't disagree with that. I guess I was looking at their Oklahoma win, and Toledo maybe you can kind of say was decent earlier. I don't know if Toledo would be a quadrant 3 win or whatever. Oklahoma would be higher. But yeah, if you didn't get to play a lot of games, I think there's got to be some punishment for that. I'm going to go a different direction here. I'm going to go with Marquette, and I got them at 40-1. Gave it out, but I like it at 33-1 a little bit. And sure, maybe you can get the better money line rollover play because they do start. But what I like about Marquette is I like the way they finished, And I mean, they beat North Carolina. I was on them that game with the money line. I just knew it was a terrible spot for North Carolina. Then they lose the next game and they'll let down to UConn. Well, that's fine because UConn is my other team. I'll be doing a money line parlay on the other side of the bracket. They got Bo Knight back. And Boo Knight's their offense. And they're actually playing pretty decent without Boo Knight as well. Not great, but, decent. And then now they have that defense that is massively improved from over the years. And they're starting to score a few points here. Nice little 4-game-in-a-row winning streak here. And so I like them on the bottom. But here's the thing about Marquette. They get Villanova with their injuries. the very first. Well, they got to get by Georgetown, then they would play Villanova theoretically, and then the next game to get to the same semifinals is Seton Hall versus St. John's. And I know St. John's was hot for a while, but I'm still not believing any defense from them. And Seton Hall their guard play is just awful. Their whole team is pretty much Sandro Mamakulashvili. So, in my opinion, Marquette at that price, playing the injured Villanova team, which I would put Villanova down to 3 behind Creighton and Connecticut right now, is a good spot for Marquette. So those are my thoughts, Ralph. Any quick?
Yeah, Villanova may be lower than that. I will say this. Marquette has historically not done well in this tournament. They're only 2-11 ATS the last 10 years. Does that mean anything? Well, they have a coach that's been there 6 years. We'll have to see if that changes around.
Yeah, let's see if Woj can change this around. So 13-13. After the North Carolina win, I kind of thought they were back on the bubble here. The good news is that they played a full schedule. They didn't have COVID pauses. And they do have the win against Wisconsin, which is still somehow looked as good. And they have the win over Creighton. And, North Carolina and the ACC really helped them. So I'm curious to see if Marquette's going to make it here at 13-13. Bad conference record, but good non-conference. Couple good non-conference opponents there. It's going to be interesting to me, Ralph.
Yeah, I don't see them. I don't see any team at 13-13 getting in with an 8-11 conference record. So again, that's added motivation though. So when you have a matchup, let's say I don't have the brackets in front of me, but if you have Marquette playing a Creighton and the Creighton team that knows they're in, and all of a sudden you have a situation where you have Creighton in and Zurikowski gets banged up early. Then boom, McDermott pulls him out, doesn't play him the rest of the game. What does the title mean that much? No, the March Madness situation means so much more. So those are the values you have to look to as well when you're in the major conferences, looking at the semifinals and finals.
100%, and getting by Nova might be just that enough to do it. So we'll see what happens there. Big 12 there, Baylor at -150. Then you have Kansas at +450. How often do you get Kansas at plus anything over 200? West Virginia +700. That could have been a little bit better if they didn't drop it to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State was kind of my sweetheart betting team this year. I bet them in a lot of spots, and it actually was one of the good ones that's been keeping us rolling here. And I like the fact they have Cade Cunningham. I think that they're kind of like the way they play defense is better than some of these teams. I think they're kind of got a good profile coming into tournaments here. What I don't like is 10-1 though. So I didn't make a play on this tournament. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I wouldn't bet Baylor just because there's such a big chalk. I like Kansas. I like your Oklahoma State as well. And, Texas is a team that, was a top 15 team. You still have Shaka Smart. They lost the double overtime game against Oklahoma State, held it close to Baylor, did lose at home against West Virginia, and then at Texas Tech. But Texas is a team I'm keeping my eye on. And don't forget with Oklahoma State, it's been 7 games since Cunningham and Likely both played. Likely missed the last 6 games. Cunningham missed that last game. So you put those two together and you win a game or two, and all of a sudden, if both of those guys are healthy, you have some momentum moving forward. And it's also a unique situation in Oklahoma State. They had a probation this year. They were ineligible to play, and you saw them very lethargic in December and January, knowing that Cade Cunningham is not going to be able to take them to the Big 12 tournament. They're never going to make March Madness. They appealed the NCAA early in January. The appeal's not going to be heard in time, so all of a sudden now they became eligible, and we saw the way they played inspired down the road. So I like sneaky teams like that where Cunningham and Likely haven't played together for a month and a half. If they get enough practice time, someone to certainly keep your eye on.
Absolutely, and great points there. I would have liked to play West Virginia. I don't like their defense that they've showed the last few games. Just getting beat by Oklahoma like that in overtime. They're all offense now, and it's changed with Huggy Bear there.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. West Virginia's let me down a few times.
Yeah.
I had them with Baylor. I didn't play them with Oklahoma State. I was close to it, laying the 7 without Cunningham, and they came up flat. And you come up flat on your home finale, where Huggy was trying to get his 900th win. I mean, to me, that's just amazing.
Yeah, and I thought they would have stepped it up against TCU. That's when I laid them. And I just thought, I just read blowout all over the place. And TCU came back in the game and gave them some fits at the end. So, one of those situations. So maybe we're down on them. They do have a couple stars I like in McBride and Culver, but yeah, Big 12. I guess the whole problem with this conference for me is that there's just so many good teams that could win it. Texas Tech is there with Beard. Chris Beard, what a great coach. And Oklahoma's been hot and cold, but still have Texas, like you said, with Shackle. Oh man, that's a tough one for me, and that's why I passed on it. And I'll definitely be watching it because I'm really curious to see how these teams do in the NCAA tournament. Let's move on to the SEC then, and this is another conference that's all up in the air. To me, Florida with a strong finish there. Tennessee is just, for a minute there, we thought Tennessee was almost a number 1 seed team for a little bit. Then everything crashed down on them. Alabama is the favorite. I kind of like Arkansas more than Alabama. I like both coaches. Arkansas is only plus 300 though. So Missouri sitting there at plus 900, which is interesting. LSU with their offense is plus 500. Anything for the SEC?
Well, I my pick to win it is Arkansas, and my long shot is LSU, and you mentioned them, so it's not really a long shot at 5-1, but they're a team that just continually impressed me. I thought there would be a big fall off from what they had. You're looking at a team in LSU that went 11-6 in conference play, 16-8 overall. Of course, you have the number 1 offense, and the defense is down in the middle of the road for efficiency. But they're just that team that every time I look at them, they just always beat my expectations. So I don't know if that's enough to really get them picked as a long shot. But if I have to pick someone outside of the top 3, it would be them.
All right, sounds good. Couple left here. We have the MAC, and the MAC's been a mess for me this year. I can't seem to figure out when these teams are going to be hitting. When there's a big opportunity, I played one of these teams, and I've lost. And MAC has cut it down to 8 teams for their conference tournament. You have Toledo, the favorite, at plus 190. Then you have Buffalo at plus 200. Akron at plus 500. Kent State at plus 500. To be honest with you, Toledo at plus 190 actually looks better than anything. What are your thoughts?
It is, but, this was a conference that preseason, I believe Bowling Green was the runaway favorite in the conference when you looked at any of the projections. So, for a team that was supposed to be so good to end up 14-10 and going 10-8 in conference play, finishing in 6th place. My problem is this: if you look at the discrepancies in the schedule, they're pretty big in the guide because those Michigan teams were all horrible, along with Northern Illinois. So, you had 4 easy teams that you played if you played a lot of the directional Michigan teams. I like Akron. Akron disappointed me down the road, losing 3 straight, but I like the coach. I like the situation where, you have Christian Jackson, a senior point guard. You got a bunch of younger other kids in power forward and center, but I think with the senior point guard, they get it done. They had lost a couple bad losses. They lost to Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan, but that was back January 9th and 12th, their 3rd and 4th game in conference play. And losing the last 3, losing to a team against Ohio that's been playing very well, Bowling Green, who we talked about was one of the favorites, and then at Buffalo, actually the Buffalo game was a nice loss with only a 2-point loss on the road. So Akron, for me, I'm going to just call one team, call the winner, and it's the Zips.
All right. Well, why did that game get canceled on Saturday? I wanted to play on them. I tried to find out. I think it was a COVID issue, maybe, but or maybe there was like an exposure. Do you know exactly?
I don't know, no, but it also it also gives them a chance right now. They had beaten Bowling Green earlier in the year on the road, 69-57. So they're going to be revenging their home loss from February 26th. So I like that quick turnaround. They played Bowling Green, then they played Buffalo, and now they're playing Bowling Green again. I think they get it done.
All right. Well, there you go. You got a pick on Akron. I like it. Let's move on to the next one then. The American Athletic Conference, and I'll tell you this, I thought my under in that Houston versus Memphis game yesterday was absolutely toast until, well, and this is what I was hoping for, they tightened up at the end, played slower, didn't want to turn the ball over, and that's when you have that under, and it's two good teams, there's a chance that happens, and it did happen, and then all of a sudden Memphis hits that three with 2 seconds left, and you're just like, oh my God, about ready to tear up your ticket. You know, you worked hard for that under, and then in the last second, Houston shoots up a half-court prayer, goes against the glass, and goes in, and it goes up to 131. You win your under by like 3 points, and I'll tell you, when that happened, that just blew my mind, and it's just one of the funnest things about sports betting, going through those highs and lows right there. It's absolutely a roller coaster. But to be honest with you, Houston looked a lot more vulnerable to me than I thought, and it was at their home court. Memphis started off the year as a turnover machine. They've cleaned some of that stuff up, and they have a lot of talent there. SMU's a sneaky one at plus 600, and I think Wichita State is fake news. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, I'd be happy, you know. If on the futures they had yes, no's, I'm with you. I'd be all over no on Wichita State. I am not buying Wichita State. You know, it's the Houston situation is unique because they're in. So, you know, I think Memphis is hungrier. Memphis knows they just played with them. They only lost by 3. Memphis is a team that I've played on numerous times, and I love Penny Hardaway. Not that I love him as a coach, but when you go read the Memphis Commercial Appeal, he is so honest whenever he says when his team is doing poorly and he was going to bench all his point guards, including his son, early in the year when they struggled, he talked about it. When they started to improve, he talked about it. He switched offenses, completely switched offenses mid-season, and he went to a motion-style Princeton offense. Well, their numbers came way down, but I'll tell you what, if you look at Ken Palm's numbers now, they are number 2 in defense. They are long, they're athletic, they don't let passes get through. Memphis is my pick. Not that I don't think Houston's better, but I think Houston knows they're already in and doesn't have the same type of motivation that Memphis does with, you know, the Tigers clearly on the bubble.
All right, well, look at that. So Memphis is looking sweet there for him for Ralphie here at plus 550. And I can't disagree with that. You know, Penny Hardaway, he's shocked me a little bit. He's been better than I thought he would be. So I agree with you. And yes, technically he isn't the best coach yet, but I think he's learning every single day. And just his presence there uplifts this team. He cares. He cares about his school. So good stuff.
And importantly, kids want to play for him, so the recruiting numbers are way up.
Yeah, the recruiting numbers are way up. It's amazing recruiting numbers over the past 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years. Well, let's move on to the final one here, the Pac-12. And, you know, Oregon's at plus 200. I don't know how that is. I guess because they got healthy at the right time and looked pretty good at the end here. You also have Colorado at plus 200. Terrible odds on those. USC at plus 230. Horrible odds. You know, I mean, you have 3 teams that are pretty close to evenly matched, and they're all plus 200. Are you kidding me? That's a hold right there. And then,
you know, those 3. If you only had those 3 teams, plus 200 would be the fair odds because they'd be keeping one of them. So if it were a 3-team tournament, that shows you how little value there is. You know, if you have 3 teams and you're getting 2-to-1 odds, those are fair odds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's 11 teams in this though.
There are 11. Oh, so you mean they're keeping a little of the theoretical hold? Oh,
it's a huge theoretical. I love it's called the theoretical hold because we can never exactly figure out how much it is, but it's pretty big. You
mentioned, I don't think you even need to mention anyone more before those 3 odds. I don't see a long shot winning this. Utah is the only team to me that could win a couple games in a row. But you know what? Don't bet Oregon. Don't bet Oregon 2-1 to win the Pac-12. I have Oregon as a long shot to win the tournament. I found them as high as 75-1. And yes, they are healthy. They only have their starting 5 players have played 3 games together this year. That's it. And now they're all with the team and they're all healthy. You have a coach like Dana Altman who took them to the Final Four 3 years ago. He knows how to get them there. To me, Oregon is my long shot for the NCAA tournament, in case we don't talk, that I think is worth betting on. So, yes, I think they could win this, but, the Mobleys are so strong in USC inside. If Oregon struggles shooting a little bit on the outside, they're going to struggle inside. So, 2-1 to win the tournament, or 75-1 to win it all. I did actually bet Oregon to win it all.
Look at that. We got a free tournament play from Ralph Michaels here, Oregon. And he's right, because Dana Altman has been a fantastic end-of-the-year coach for tournaments and for how he does in the tournaments, or how he does the NCAA tournament, how he does it finish off the regular season. So great stuff there. I'm going to throw Colorado out of that. They're a great home team, and I think their stats just get a little bit elevated because of how hard they play at home. For some reason, they're just one of those teams that take us, they put a stamp on their home play. They care. It seems like they care more about home play than anything else. It's like protecting their house. They're up there in the high elevation. They capitalize when they do it, and they kind of play a little bit out of their minds. But they also have some real stinkers too. So,
let me tell you one thing. As you say that, I think Thad Boyle is not coaching them properly. You have one of the most talented teams, and you may have the most talent in the Big 12. When you have a point guard like McKinley Wright, you should win more games. And why they are number 262 in tempo, when you have that altitude and you should be using that speed to your advantage. So I think he's done a poor job coaching. I think with the people he has, with the point guard he has, you should be trying to run these guys up and down the court and off the court. They did only lose the one game to Utah, but they've been put in some good spots. I mean, they beat USC. USC was playing their 4th game in 7 days, and USC played at Utah 2 days earlier. So they get put in a lot of nice positions with that Utah-Colorado back-to-back games that it gives them that home edge. So I don't know if it's that they give them the home edge or it's scheduled as that. But I don't think they take advantage enough. I think they should run and be a more up-tempo team.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, going to Cal and losing to Cal is despicable to me. Losing to Washington in January. In Washington, this is one of the worst Washington teams I've seen. So very, very true. I agree. Tad Boyle is not doing the best for this team that should have great longs working up there in the elevation. Well, the one thing you do have to mention with Colorado, though, which is a huge boon, is they are the number 1 free throw shooting team in the country. So, when you get to the semifinals and the finals, and that type of team is in, and you're in a conference where they're calling a lot of fouls early, Colorado is a team that I won't be afraid to circle back to if they get there because of their excellent free throw shooting. Which makes them a good favorite, but one thing I will say is shooting a free throw with a massive elimination game is certainly a little bit different than regular season. So let's see if that holds up. But at the same time,
well, you shoot 83% as a team. That is damn impressive. Yeah. So I don't know who the leaders were. To me, I don't know. I'm going to look right now to see if I can get there real quick. The year by year, and it's not letting me do it. I don't ever remember a team shooting 80 that was in a major conference, but next time we talk, we'll look it up and I'll see. Yeah. I can't get to that page from where I am. So, again, shoot 83.4% as a unit, and then you have your point guard who never misses. So, as you said, if they're a favorite late, there's someone to keep an eye on if they get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't be afraid to make that judgment, Kiev. Just because we talk and I say I don't like this team, that doesn't mean you're not going to bet them in a game-by-game situation. We're talking about what we think is going to happen. If something different happens, you just turn your thought process 360 degrees and you say, okay, I am on this team for these reasons, and you have to be able to adjust the thought pattern. And even if you have Do not throw away value in a single game because you don't want to play against your prop. If there's value in that team, bet that team. Let your future play out the way it is, but don't give away good value in a game because that's not what's best for your futures.
100%. I mean, if you're a 4-point favorite over like a Stanford 5-point favorite, they're going to hit the free throws most likely in that situation. So I agree with you there. I just don't like them as a tournament team on a neutral court, but we'll see what happens because game by game is more important. And yes, you should go against some of your tickets. If there's value, that's what sports bettors do. So great advice there, my man. And real quick before we go, anything for the tournament? Now you did just give us Oregon at 75-1, so I'm thanking you for that. I actually took USC at I think 50-1 a while back. Then they went through a little bit of a loss. I think they lost they lost Arizona after that, so their odds got a little bit better. You probably give them 60-70-1 right now. I liked USC because of their height and the Mobleys, and very tall team, very tough to get the ball over them. So I did take them a little bit early. I only took one other team that I gave away to subscribers, but anything else for the tournament?
Well, just remember this. There's less travel, which means more practice time, and I give a big edge to coaching in those second and 2 days when you only have 1 day to plan for your team. But with everyone in Indianapolis this year, you're going to have a lot more practice time during that week when you're there, especially if you make it past the first round. So my coaching numbers I'm probably going to double what I give my coaching power rating numbers because of the uniqueness in the situation this year.
All right, well, there you go. Great stuff from Ralph Michaels. Where can our listeners find your great information for conference tournaments and the games this weekend?
Well, again, if you would visit WagerTalk.com, you just go to the Ralph Michaels page, or the shortcut is wt.buzz/RM. I do a daily NBA stat sheet, which will truly help you cut your NBA prep down work each day. I have a college basketball stat report, and then next week, once March Madness is determined in the teams, I'll have a new stat report updated with all current numbers and records. All
right. Well, make sure you guys check Ralph out at WagerTalk.com. Thanks so much, Ralph, for coming on. Really appreciate all your knowledge. Had a lot of fun talking to you.
Kiev, always a pleasure. Thanks, bud.
Make sure you guys go to WagerTalk and check Ralph out. Everyone, make sure to get into our NCAA Tournament Challenge. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions, please tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Everyone enjoy the rest of your week and go get some winners.